The Apollo missions were created by NASA and lasted from around 1961 to 1972. The creation of the Apollo missions were inspired by John F. Kennedy and his desire to beat the Soviet Union in the space race during the Cold War. With the Soviet Union being the first ones to send a human into space, Kennedy was determined to send the first man on the moon. In the Apollo program, there were a total of 12 manned missions and many unmanned test missions. Throughout the many years of trial and error, the Apollo missions had one goal: to send humans to the moon and bring them back safely. The most historic mission was the first successful mission, called Apollo 11. It was the first out of all previous Apollo missions to successfully bring a person to the moon and return them back safely to Earth. With 6 following missions after that, Apollo 13 was the one that would never be forgotten due to the disaster it experienced.
Days before the mission Apollo 13, Charles Duke, who was the backup lunar module pilot, exposed the crew to German measles. They replaced Duke with pilot Ken Mattingly, who took over the mission. Oxygen tank number 2 that was placed on Apollo 13 was originally from Apollo 10. This tank was removed from Apollo 10 because of underlying issues but retested several times before being placed on Apollo 13. The tanks that are placed on these missions are normally emptied half full. Oxygen tank number 1 behaved well. Oxygen tank number 2 did not. 2 weeks later, they retested the tanks and the exact same thing happened. They attempted to fix oxygen tank 2 by boiling it off by using an electric heater. While trying to fix this, turns out it severely damaged the internal heating elements of the tank.
The mission. The Apollo 13 mission started off relatively smooth with only a few small surprises, and according to NASA, it was looking to be the smoothest flight so far. That was until 55 hours and 55 minutes when oxygen tank number 2 blew up. The explosion proved to be significantly damaging to the command module, causing it to lose most of its normal supply of electricity, light, and water. It also caused tank number 1 to fail as well. The crew became aware of the explosion when a sharp bang accompanied with a vibration occurred at 9:08 on April 13th. The crew was in a pretty dire situation. The explosion had significantly crippled them, and they were in no shape to finish the mission. And being 200,000 miles out from Earth, it was going to take a lot to get them back home. The first thing the crew did was they moved from the command module to the life module, and thus started the long, complicated trip back home. Every single thing from power to water to oxygen to carbon dioxide had to be carefully conserved and purposely distributed in order to get them back home. It was long and complicated, but through the quick thinking of the crew and the guys at NASA, the men came home relatively unharmed.
Space is a new frontier that is still very infantile to humanity. NASA has been leading this frontier since 1958, and they have accomplished so much so quickly, having put the first man on the moon only 11 years after its establishment. Braving a new world comes with hardship and failures, one of which being Apollo 13, the 7th manned mission, and what was supposed to be the 3rd to land on the moon. The attempted landing of Apollo 13 and the exploration of the Frei Morro crater was aborted due to a failure in oxygen tank number 2, forcing the crew to use the lunar module as a lifeboat and circling around the moon, making it back to the Earth unharmed. This mission was influential in that even with the failure of an oxygen tank, the rest of the spacecraft worked as intended and brought the pilots back safely.